Hi, I'm your host, Reena Suri, and welcome to Thriving Changes, a place where we share stories from brave and courageous people who have navigated challenges, crisis, or a change in their personal or professional life and gave it a new meaning. It's a platform where leaders open up about their fears, vulnerabilities, and the journey that led them to triumph. Our hope is to inspire and motivate others to take their first step towards thriving changes. Inspired by creativity and the art of strategic storytelling, Kristin Golliher took the giant leap from corporate America to embrace her entrepreneurial spirit and create a boutique agency based in Colorado that rocks results and empowers employees. Her company, WildRock Public Relations and Marketing, helps takes the brands to the next level by offering superior strategies, more imagination, solid media relationships, and relentless execution. But success doesn't come easy, does it? As leaders, there are times when we have to take some difficult decisions. In this podcast, Kristen shares with us her decision to let go of her biggest client. Talk about scary. While it was a chosen change, she feels she should have made it way before that moment. She didn't realize the toll that it was taking on her and her team until they made the decision. She walks us through the journey of her aha moment, how she strategically pulled her team along in the decision making process, how she took the call, and what it felt like to lose the biggest slice of the pie. It's a conversation full of learning moments. I hope it adds value to you. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Thank you for taking out the time to be on Thriving Changes. I am so honored. It's really my privilege to have this conversation. I am really looking forward to what's coming because what you're going to share today is really powerful for entrepreneurs or even leaders in businesses and organizations. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from it. So thank you from my heart.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. It was so awesome to meet you a couple months ago in Chicago and coming full circle now to doing the podcast with you. So, yeah, I'm so honored to be here. And I love when we had our pre call and I had asked you, how deep can I go with some of these answers and what can I share with your listeners? And you're like, anything, let's go there. I think it's just exciting to be able to share things openly. And I think as women specifically, sometimes we have a hard time doing that, right? Like, here's the rug and let me just shove the truth under there and not be open and honest. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to share from the heart today too.
Yeah, it's so important. We talk about issues, we talk about a difficult decision in our workplaces, in our personal life, and we just make a statement. Oh, I had a tough time. I had to make a difficult call. It was a stressful period. The last couple of months have been stressful, but we never really dig into the details of what actually happened.
Yeah.
And I think we learn from our mistakes. I think the motto that I live by is that I don't take problems and issues or any difficulty that I'm facing in my work or in my personal life as something negative. I look at it as an opportunity to grow, to learn. Yes, it is difficult to go through it at any given time, but once we come through that, once we are past that, we can reflect and we see that we've grown through this. And I can actually say that I've improved this skill set of mine. And it just prepares me better for the future when it might not be the same thing, it might not be a similar circumstances, but because I've built up my resilience to navigate those difficult conversations, difficult decisions, I can handle it better, whatever comes my way. I think I'm just keeping everybody in the suspense that what is this thing we are
Right.
talking about?
Man, I really hope we can impress everyone where the buildup is so intense.
Yes. But before we dive into that, I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll dig into the more intense stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great. Before I do, one of the things that you were talking about that I just wanted to share was about mistakes. And I'll date myself when I say this, but remember in the olden days when we used to have film in cameras and we used to take pictures and then we'd take them to the drugstore or to the local grocery store and we'd get them developed and you'd get them back, but you'd have no idea, right? It wasn't the modern day convenience where we have our cell phone and we can instantaneously edit and adjust images or delete them if they're not the right one. And so my business coach shared this years ago, and she said that when cameras had film and pictures were made in that way, they would call them a mistake, right? It wasn't a mistake, it was a mistake. And I think on topic of change and everything else, that has been such a big learning of mine is we learn and grow from those. And if we've learned anything in business ownership, like you and I, change is constant. A lot of it is chosen where we decide the outcome and we're instigating it because we're the entrepreneurs. But sometimes change is done to you. And that's always the harder one, right? When change happens to you. And in owning my business, WildRock Public Relations and Marketing since 2012, I've learned so much about change and I have a new learning every single day, which is awesome and also exhausting. But I've been in business since 2012 and we work with clients locally here in Colorado and then across the country. And we've even done some global campaigns. So our big areas of interest are lifestyle, travel and tourism, healthcare, high tech, consumer products, and everything in between. We've done a lot of work in retail and development, construction and building. So it's just been really awesome to sink in and help other organizations the same way that I helped OtterBox. So I actually spun out of OtterBox, which is a protective case company. And remember going in and telling the CEO that I was starting this new company called WildRock. And he just got this big grin on his face. And he's, yeah, I knew you'd do this someday. Meanwhile, I've been dragging my feet for years. Was I brave enough to make the entrepreneurial leap? Did I want to stay in corporate? For me, it was just such a wonderful transition. I had just started my family and I was really looking for more of that flexibility and freedom and really that opportunity to carve my own path in the world. So I've absolutely loved having my PR and marketing agency. And then a couple years ago, I spun off another organization called WildRock Trailblazers. And I actually work with women like you and I who are looking for one-on-one coaching and also premium retreats to once again really be able to sink into their power alleys and really make their wildest, career and business dreams a reality. So WildRock by day and Trailblazers by passion. And it's just brought all of this together in such a cool way. And so once again, thank you for having me. That's a little bit more about who I am and why I'm here, what brought us together today.
Yeah, absolutely. So your transition from the corporate world to starting your own business was basically you were starting a new family and you're looking for that flexibility and the time and that you can give to your family. What inspired or motivated you to make that change? Were there any hesitations, any apprehensions when you decided to make this move?
Yeah, no, every day my joke here internally with my team is I'd really like to be the intern, but nobody will let me be the intern. So CEO it is. But yeah, absolutely. Just like anybody else, I have those moments of what am I doing and how am I growing this thing and how am I scaling this thing? And I think for me, the turning point in leaving OtterBox was my youngest was still in diapers and I was at this trade show and I got this call from my nanny and she's like, Kristin, Hannah ate diaper rash cream. And I'm like, what? I'm in Las Vegas. I'm so far away from home. I can't do anything. What is that going to look like? How do we fix this? Is she all right? Like call 911, right? Like all these things are going through your head as a mom. And then I get off the phone with her and then my husband calls and he's at his office and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know. Mallory just called me. What's happening? And get off the phone with him. And then my mom calls and I just remember bawling. I'm at this trade show booth and I feel so far away and so disconnected from my family. And I'm like, what am I doing? I love PR and marketing and I love this team that I built at OtterBox, but I'm seeking something different. I want to do something greater as a mom and as a career woman. And it was a tough call, right? For me, I was the breadwinner of my family. I had this new baby and I was thinking about branching off to start my own business, right? What was I going to do about health insurance? What was I going to do about benefits and all of these other things and time off? And how was I going to make this all work for myself? And the fear was very much there in the beginning to make this chosen change. but still exist, because then you enter new levels of fear of the growth and scalability, and where do you take your company next, and how do you start up new spin-offs like Trailblazers. So it's
Yeah.
something I think us as entrepreneurs constantly churn with, is what is the change and what is the rate of change, and we tend to like it in a
Yeah.
weird way, so we're like, bring it, what's the next change.
Yeah. So how long did it take for you to just set up the basic structure of your company?
So I was working on it in the background for about a year. And my joke was, as soon as my daughter started sleeping through the night, then I really started to focus on my business, because I was like, I'm not getting any sleep, right? Like, I already know how to live sleepless nights. So honestly, like, I would get up early in the morning before my daughter would get up. I'd work on WildRock. I'd go work at OtterBox during the day. And then I would take my lunch breaks from my car. I'd take calls and then come home at night. And after dinner and after getting her to bed, I would work again on WildRock stuff. So it was just this crazy cycle. And
Mm.
eventually my husband's like, oh, hi, what about me? When are you going to start paying attention to me? Like, you're so busy working your full-time job and starting this company. You're
Yeah.
at this fork in the road, Kristin. Like, something's got to give. He's just been such a great reminder and cheerleader for me, really, to keep going and keep pursuing these dreams. But yeah, I think it was at that fork in the road that I was like, okay, I need to pick one or the other. And I think I can really make a go at this agency. So I did it. I made the leap. But then I didn't leave for another 6 months. I stayed on board to help cross train and help integrate my team into some of my role and kind of help them figure out what their path was forward. And then finally I was like, okay, guys, it's time. I know you'd let me stick around forever working my real job and trying to get this company off the ground. At that 6 month point, I was like, okay, it's time for me to officially make the leap.
All right. So it sounds like it was a very strategic move. You had planned it really well. You'd done some research, structuring it, financials, everything before you really came out in the open about it. And even while you decided to do it, you still had a full-time job that could support you, and the business really established itself, and it can start giving you some return.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in a good plan, right? Whether it's a business plan or a marketing plan, which is what we do every day at WildRock, like, having a plan, that's what keeps you focused and really keeps you driven towards goals, even just as simple as writing it down. It doesn't have to be a 50-page plan, but something where you're like, yes, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm aiming towards. I think that helps us, and especially as entrepreneurs and busy women, right? Stay focused on what are we working on? What are we doing, so that we don't get sidetracked into the next shiny.
yeah, I completely believe in that as well, because otherwise you can really get lost and derailed, and
Yeah.
really it can set you back, not just in time but financially. Especially in the beginning, we really need to be careful where we are putting our money, because you're just starting off.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that vision about what you want to do and the next steps.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is absolutely having a plan. But I think one of the biggest learnings that I had from my first business is investing in the right talent and the right support right from the beginning. In the early years, yeah, I was bootstrapping everything. I'm like, okay, I'll do it all. I'll go land the deal. You know, our internal joke is, I'll walk your dog, wash your car, watch your kids, and oh, by the way, do your PR and marketing. So we were bootstrapping everything. And in doing that, we made a lot of mistakes in the early years, right? We didn't have things properly set up. We didn't have the right foundations for things. We didn't have the right templates. We didn't have the right systems and processes. And so there were a lot of early learnings, and some of that is standard startup. But now on the Trailblazer side, I'm investing in that in the right way from the beginning, because I know what it feels like when we don't make the right investments and when we try to bootstrap everything. So I think that's the caveat is, yeah, like, for startups, absolutely, you're trying to do everything and wear all of the hats of your organization, but it's just like a piece of clothing, right? You get what you pay for. If you put it through the wash twice and it starts to unravel and everything, you're like, yeah, I should have probably invested in a nicer material or a nicer brand so that it didn't fall apart in the wash. So there are some of those things too that I can't deny. In the early years, we had a lot of those. I call them experiential learnings, right? This is the typical public relations person, but it was like climbing Mount Everest every day, where I'm like, yep, I probably would have done that one differently.
Yeah. I just learned that. It's almost like 6 months into recording this podcast, and my turnaround time has been really slow because I was trying to do it all by myself. And I'm not much of a tech editing bit, and I'm not media savvy. It's just not what I do. And I have no interest, but I learned how to edit and I was making my posts, and it was draining me out. And it was delaying the project where I could really put my time and effort and the fire in me into the things that I really want to do. But I was getting exhausted doing the stuff that I really don't like. So finally I said, all right, time
Yeah.
to time. Yes.
Delegate. Yeah.
Delegate.
It's interesting because when I first started WildRock, I outsourced my bookkeeping and I did not understand how my books worked. So I brought them all in house, and talk about a killer exercise. So much like you, you're like editing podcasts and you're doing social media posts and you're like, why am I doing this? I want to pull my hair out. But I started doing my books so that I could understand my numbers, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point in this podcast. But I'm so passionate about not only revenue numbers, but more importantly, profitability. At the end of the day, if you're not profitable and you're not making money, why are you in business? Learning to do that was like, oh my gosh, it was so hard. It just killed me on every level. So I hear you. You're like sitting there, you're like, why am I writing a social media post? But man, when you delegate that, you're like, I have such an appreciation for you. Thank you for writing that post.
I do. I do. But I think social media posts or even editing, it's a different ball game. I think I will not really lose much if I delegate it out. But I think finances, understanding your balance sheet, understanding your profit and loss statement, it's crucial for
Yes.
any business. If I don't know that and so I just give it to somebody else, I won't even know what's happening. And I've heard at least 3 or 4 incidences. Maybe it didn't happen with you. You had a really trustworthy person. But I have heard incidences where money was getting siphoned off. Your profits. People have incurred losses because they did not understand their financial statements.
100%. Yep.
I know I'm going to hate it when I have to do it, but I think it's a skill that it is a must for everybody, not just entrepreneurs, but
Yes,
in your
everyone.
everyone. Even if I'm not working, I still need to understand my taxes. I still need to understand how much I'm bringing home and how much I'm spending,
Yep.
basic budgeting. It's so important to have that basic knowledge. And of course, when you're running a company, you need to understand the most part of it.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely. Good learnings all the way around is delegate what you can, but understand how things work is, I think, the bigger message here.
yeah, I'm glad I learned it because I have appreciation for whatever they do. But also, I'm glad that I learned it because now I have an understanding of what's possible and what's not, and how I
Right.
can improve myself. So it wasn't all a waste because it gave me tools to improve how I do things. So even if I don't have to edit, now I know how I can structure things or what I can do differently. So anyway, now you had Wild Rock PR marketing established and it's going great, and you have some major clients, you have some good clients, and then you decided to let go one of your biggest clients. Walk us through that.
Oh man, yes. So as I was joking about a minute ago, when I first started WildRock, I would take on any business because we needed at the time, right? The idea was we needed that business. We couldn't just let somebody walk. So we're like, we'll do whatever you need to earn your business. And I think it was probably in year, 3 or 4 that I was like, gosh, we should really rethink this. Let's look at our portfolio. Who do we actually like working with? I know that my team is incredibly smart and we do phenomenal work. But sometimes you're working with those clients and you're like, holy cow, this is a total values misalignment. And so we talked about change at the beginning, and I talked about this idea of chosen change and unchosen change. And chosen change is the change that we choose. We get to decide what happens. And generally speaking, during chosen change, I'm like, let's rip the band-aid off. Let's make this decision and let's do it really fast. But this was one of those changes that really had to be done strategically. And so we were in a strat planning session. We work with Patterson Center and they're incredible. They do these 2-day strategic operations plans and we do them every year where we really look at the business as a whole, like who are we, where are we going, what does it look like, how are we going to get there, and basically mapping it all out. And so in typical Kristin fashion, right, my team would laugh when they hear this is, yep, that was typical. But I come in on day two, we had such a productive day one. And I come in on day two and everybody's not more than 2 sips of coffee. And I'm like, I think we should let go of our biggest account. And like looking across the table, I think people were choking on coffee or falling out of their chairs. It was like, what did she just say? I just dropped this truth bomb. Everybody knew, everybody in the room knew that there was a values misalignment was the biggest thing. And it just wasn't a good fit. And I came in and I'm like, I just don't feel like this is the right fit. So this was in December of that year. And it wasn't until a few months later, we got to Mother's Day, which is in May, and I worked over Mother's Day. I didn't get a Mother's Day that year. And I came in that Monday and I said, team, we're done. This account is not good. I spent all weekend putting together this huge executive presentation for their organization that didn't impact our work, or it wasn't anything that was motivating our team. And so that was really that pivotal moment of coming into the team and being like, it's time. We've got to let this account go.
So what transpired? I know that you mentioned that it was on your mind for almost 5 months, 6 months, and then you missed Mother's Day. What went through your mind in that week? Let's backtrack a bit.
Yep.
There must have been some conversation with the clients, some interaction that must have pivoted that, regardless of working over Mother's Day. There must have been some communication that must have really triggered that thought.
Yeah, I think it was the slow roll, right? It's the death by 1,000 cuts. It's this idea that it's typically not one thing that triggers anybody, right? It's the combination of these things that happen over time. And for us, it just became that values misalignment. And we were putting our best foot forward and doing what we knew was incredible work. We were showing year over year results and KPIs, and it was always a push, right? What's next? What are we doing now? How are we growing? Now can we double that? Now can we triple that? And I'm looking back at my team and everybody's going, oh my gosh, Kristin, it's actually not possible to do that, right? There is no way that we can make that happen. And we made some pretty incredible things happen over the course of working with this organization. But some of the things that they were asking were just so lofty. And in addition to the Mother's Day thing, a couple weeks prior to that, we were asked to rebid on the entire business, which is very standard for agencies to have to go back and do an RFP and go back to the drawing board. But the issue that we had in doing that is we brought the A game, we brought the A team, and we produced this overview that was absolutely killer, right? Here's the entire farm and all of the animals and all of the ideas, right? We are giving away the farm. And during that presentation, we had people coming in and out of the room. We had people late to the presentation. We had people with their video off. Just all of these video etiquette things that were just so against, once again, some of those values. And our values at WildRock are deep respect of others and ourselves, right? That's number one. Solutions driven, professionalism, embracing change, and striving for consistency and continuous improvement, and collaboration to drive results. So every single thing that was happening over the course of those 5-6 months leading up to the decision were literally rubbing every single value wrong, right? Nothing was going according to how we work best and environments that we work best in. I think it came to a head on Mother's Day, but you're absolutely right. There were these little things that were happening over time, and it was so incredibly stressful. We were living and breathing this brand, and it was one of many of our other clients. Also, in fairness to them and fairness to our business, and looking at the pie chart overall and being like, if this is like a huge piece of the pie, this is not strategic. And the good news is our team did great work. So the account kept growing and growing. And when you're in a service-based industry, it's hard to say, no, we would not like to take more money. But I think that was a good learning through it too. The bigger the pie gets, the more responsibility it is. And the more lopsided that pie chart becomes when you look at your overall revenue, and then what percentage of that revenue is this particular account, or in other businesses, it could be this particular product. So there are different ways to look at a pie chart, but such a great learning. We have since, and we'll talk about where we are now, focused on that, right? Like we don't let any one client get to be so big that it just consumes the pie chart, because that's not healthy either. Because then if we go to the whole idea of unchosen change, somebody else says, okay, sorry, WildRock, we have to let you go. We no longer have budget. And then I'm faced with very tough decisions as an employer, right? Like, I'm doing layoffs, or people are taking pay cuts, or there's other things that have to go, right? When you're not making the revenue that you once had anticipated. So tough decisions along the way, tough moments, but it definitely was a slow build to that.
It must have been a process to let go of that client also, having that conversation with them and with your team and with your family. Give us a little insight into what was happening in each of those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. So the truth bomb was dropped back in December, right? So I had planted that seed, so to speak, with my team to be like, here's this, and I'm just going to slowly walk away and let everybody percolate on that. And I think through those conversations and obviously following the strata, it became clearer and clearer. I started to roll out some of these things internally. Take a look at our pie chart. Does this make anybody feel comfortable? Maybe we should think about some other business development activities, or take a look at where your time and energy is going every day. Is it filling your cup as a marketing professional? Are you enjoying the work? So some of those conversations happening over that course of time, I think internally were very helpful. Internal to my family conversations, my husband serves as my business therapist. And a lot of times we walk our dog and we solve all the problems of the world on the walking of the dog trips. But we're walking the dog and I'm like, what would you do if I just said, I can't take a paycheck for a while? And he's like, if that meant you weren't as stressed as you are, then absolutely, without question. Some of those conversations. And then fast forward, the conversations with the clients too, that wasn't overnight. And I think for me, that breaking point was the presentation where we just felt such a misalignment, I guess, for lack of a better word, on where we were going and what we were doing. And so I contacted my team right after. I called an all hands on deck call. And I said, I'm ready to make the phone call. Who's ready? Who's with me, right? Like the Jerry Maguire moment. And like unanimous. My whole team is like, 100% Kristin, make the call. And so the great part was we had established this awesome working relationship with a handful of the contacts there, many of which we're still friends with, which is so cool, right? We're still talking to them and working with them in different capacities. But when it came to this particular work and this particular client project, we couldn't continue it. And so picking up the phone and having those conversations and really coming to the agreement that this wasn't going to work. And they wanted different things than what we could provide. And it wasn't filling our cup, and it certainly wasn't meeting their expectations. And so coming to those conclusions together, I think was just such a healthy way to do it. And as a result, we've still kept those relationships intact, the ones that we wanted, right? there were certain people at the organization where I'm like, if we never have to see each other or talk again, like I am 100% on board. And I'm sure that they felt the same. But the ones that we wanted to, we really did that in a professional way. And so we did a 90-day transition. We had 3 months to hand things over and to ensure that their team was set up for success, so that once again, we weren't just doing the drastic, let's rip the Band-Aid off and let's be done. We really made sure that they had what they needed to be successful, and developing all of those systems and processes so that we didn't leave anybody hanging. And I think in learning and looking back at that, that was such a great way to do it. And then I also had this affirmation moment, fast forward, right? So clients let go, we're start working on new things. And one of my employees came in and she said, hey, Kristin, my husband wanted me to thank you. I'm like, thank me for what? She's like, thank you for letting go of that client. And I'm like, oh, wow. I cannot even imagine what their dog walking or dinner conversations had been related to work. And what type of pressure that puts on me as a business owner, right? I don't want that. I want people going home and being like, guess what I worked on today? It was so cool, or it was so fun. So just huge affirmations afterwards, right? You feel like this weight is just lifted off your shoulders to make those decisions and to put yourself in the driver's seat for what's best for you, what's best for your team, what's best for your business, what's best for your family, all of those things, because it all plays into it, right?
Yeah, I was coming to that how much were you bringing home?
Everything. All the luggage.
Yeah, and how it was impacting, and was it worth it? Because that makes the decision, no matter how hard it is, as you said, it's reaffirming, it's just not worth it. If we can't overlook that other question is that even though we know that this is the right decision moving forward, in that given moment, I'm sure you were scared. And obviously, letting go of this client will have a huge impact on your revenue. And for the time being, you would still have bills to pay. And so, how did you navigate that aspect? First of all, what was going on in your head? And then, how did you take care of that financial gap in that time?
Yeah, I love this. And this is just one of those moments to just get real is I was terrified, right? It's that huge wave of fear that just hits you where you'll have moments in your day as you're making those decisions where you're like, okay, this is right. You're cheering yourself on. And then other moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. It is so overwhelming because I'm responsible for my family and I'm responsible for the families of all of my employees. So those types of things, they keep you up at night and it's terrifying. But one of my values is faith in all things. And I do believe at the end of the day that everything always works out the way that it should, right? Maybe it's the way that you wanted it to, or maybe it's not the way that you wanted it to, but it always works out one way or another. And for me, it was just like when I started my business, it was such a leap of faith to just do it and just make it happen and make the decision and make the call. And you're terrified in making the call. My hand's shaking. I'm trying to hold my phone and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I had to get in my car and I'm like taking my kids to basketball practices. They're like sitting in the back seat listening to the breakup call. I'm like, welcome to the real world, girls. This is how mom does business. You know, you're like powerful businesswoman. But yeah, it's tough and it's terrifying. But the other wave I think that comes over you is this huge sense of relief of I did it and I can do anything. And no matter what happens from this point forward, we landed it once. We can land this again, right? This isn't impossible. It's not overnight. It doesn't happen. And our gaps weren't filled overnight. But the other good news, and back to the bookkeeping thing, right? I had kept such an eye on our P&L and we had savings to get us through those gap months. Nobody took a pay cut. We didn't cut, benefits. We kept our retirement plan, we kept our healthcare plan, our vision plan, all the things, right? Everybody still got profit sharing. It was incredible the way that it all worked out. And it shouldn't have worked out that way, losing your biggest account. But we had also, in the course of those 3 months, in terms of the transition, we'd also started to put our feelers out there again. Hey, we're seeking new business. Hey, we have an opening coming up this August. Hey, can we go grab lunch? So I started to do more of those business development activities again, which I think helped again with that wave of relief. Something is going to come in, something is going to help us fill this gap. And fast forward to where we are, today, a couple years later, we have filled that gap and then some. And that to me is absolutely incredible. And we've done it over time. Like I said before, it's not instantaneous, and anything in business ownership, right? That's the whole thing, right? You can be an outsider looking in at a business and you're like, oh, she or he, they're so successful. How did they do it? And I want to be like that. Well, it's not easy, right? Having a business is harder than having children. I'm like, I got my first, I got my middle baby, which is WildRock, and I've got my second. And sometimes my WildRock baby is needy and hard, right? It doesn't always come easy for entrepreneurs. We tend to make it look easy on the flip side because you hear about the successes. And that's why I'm just loving this conversation, because we get to talk about these moments of vulnerability and truth and peel that rug back up and be like, what is underneath there and what was going through your mind? Because it was fear and the anticipation of the unknown. But my encouragement for people listening to this is what's on the other side of that chosen change can sometimes open up a world of opportunity that you never knew existed. For me, I'm not on a plane every single month going to visit this client. Talk about the opportunities that's opened, right? I'm not missing my kids' sporting events anymore because I get to be home. And you can't put a price on that, right? That's incredible.
Yeah. Absolutely. One big thing that, as I was listening to you, the positive attitude, your growth mindset really came out in that conversation. The optimism that you had, that something is going to work out, something is going to work out. It's what we say to ourselves during these times makes such a huge difference to our own mental well-being and our anxiety levels. It brings the stress levels down when we just keep, it's like giving yourself a hug. It's taking care of your inner self. Even that growth mindset, that optimism, it needs to be built up. It doesn't come overnight. We have to realize that it takes time to build that muscle as well. That when we look, like, it's a part of resiliency to build, to have that no, it's going to work out. No matter how dim it looks at that given moment, to tell yourself that no, it's going to work out. Everything is going to be fine. It takes a lot of courage to say that to yourself. So that self-talk matters, what we say to ourselves. It helps, we can actually think of solutions because the mind calms down with those little pacifiers that we keep giving it.
Yeah. And this is your world, right? You are the resiliency queen. You teach on this. And it is something I totally agree. It's like exercise. You have to practice using that muscle and you have to know what that looks like. And I think for me, some of that was ingrained in my childhood. My family all had ranches. So you worked hard, right? It was physical labor every summer. And that's what we did. You get bucked off the horse. You don't just lay in the arena and cry. You get up. You need to get back on the horse, get back in the saddles. I think, at least for me, and I've, heard it from so many different women that I work with, that I coach, that are either in my coaching program or going through my retreat, is some of it is instilled in a very young age in us. And others of us have to continue to learn it and have to continue to practice it because it doesn't come natural. And I think as women, we have to back off and let things go and push things under the rug or not talk about our feelings or emotions or addressing anger as actual anger, right? We are taught very different. And in that, it just creates some of these things that limit us in terms of external limitations and or our own limits that we're putting on ourselves. And so I love what you're sharing in terms of just that positive self-talk is how do we do more of that? For me as a mom of two girls, how do I encourage that for them? That we're not going to get down on ourselves, like we're getting back on the pony, right? Let's make it happen.
We need to stay away from all kind of guilt conversations, anything that keeps telling ourselves, oh, I made this mistake, maybe I should have done this better. We did our best, we've made decisions, maybe we didn't take on the right client, it was a choice that we made, but I'm doing something about it right now, and I don't need to beat myself up for it. I did the best at that time and I'm doing the best that I can at this time. Every time that negative conversation shows up, I think we need to check ourselves, that what are we telling ourselves and what are we telling the people around us, because it invariably comes out in other relationships as well, whether are professional or personal, because it's the same person that shows up everywhere. So it's so important to have that positive mindset to help us through that journey. This incident obviously has taught you a lot. So, what are some of the changes that you brought within your company, in your organizations, in your values, in your culture because of this particular experience?
Yeah, all of it, right? The joke about things being experiential learnings. You've got to go through the learnings and you got to feel the pain, you got to feel the burn in order to learn and change and grow from that. And for us, there was so many things. So I've talked about the pie chart. We're looking at our pie chart all the time of where our clients, where our big clients, where our growth opportunities, where can we invest more time and resources, and how do we continue to grow those accounts, but ensuring that things are equal around the pie so that one isn't more prevalent than another. So I think just looking at the financial side of things has been really important. We're also looking at the client life cycle, and it's an exercise that we actually do through our strategic operations planning process, but it's something that we even just do every 6 months as an organization to plot our clients and where are they going. Some of them are growing and they're up for great renewals and those kinds of things, and other clients maybe are diminishing and they're slowing down, or maybe they're at the end of a grant cycle or the end of their budget or end of a project. And so they're petering out, and we'll add them into, okay, can we just continue to follow up with them over time? That's been a great exercise that we've been able to go through to plot and visually see where are our clients at and who's growing and thriving and who do we really need to pay attention to. Something else that we focus so much on is the cultural side of things. And I think when you work for organizations, sometimes you work for an organization where you're very inclined to share feedback openly. And I would say WildRock in general has a very open door policy. But I think people were so scared to say, I don't want to work on this account, or this account sucks, Kristin, because it was our biggest account. So one of the learnings I had is how do I do a better job at collecting that team feedback and specifically asking, right? Kelly on my team, Kelly, how do you feel about this? Or Annika on my team, Annika, how do you feel about this? Because otherwise, I don't always get that information. And then we've also since implemented a cultural survey that goes out every single month, and it has different topics related to culture. just so I can collect that feedback, because solutions driven is one of our values. Really make sure that we're driving towards solutions. So if there's something I'm doing that's pissing people off every day, like I need to know, right? And then I can change and I grow and modify things, or vice versa, right? Maybe there's stuff that other people are doing that's not working for me as the leader. And so it becomes that full circle communication, so that we're getting that from all angles and really getting a pulse and understanding on what we're working on and why. I would say that those are some big things that we've, implemented as a result. And the other thing that actually just came up this morning in a meeting, we have a bunch of really exciting proposals in the pipeline, which is so awesome and also terrifying, because we're like, wow, this is a lot of work. But one of the things I told my team that I'll share with your listeners too is, if somebody really wants to work with you, you don't have to do it all at once, right? You don't have to say, yep, let's start tomorrow. Yep, let's make it happen. Even if you're a startup, because let's say you're planning a trip or people are going to be in or out or whatever, staggering those start times of when you take on projects and thinking about things like, are my kids going back to school? Or is there something happening in the world, like a holiday, that I need to consider? Because the start stop doesn't work. And I'm trying to find, and I'll share it with you when I find it, but it talks about the inefficiencies in the start stop. And there's tons of things I've read over the years, but I need something that points to this specifically, because it's something I shared with my team this morning, is we can stagger the start dates of these different accounts in a way that works best for our team, right? We don't have to kill ourselves doing this. We can do really great work, but we don't have to do it all at once. And that's a benefit to our clients too, because then we're doing the best work possible and we're focused on their accounts and doing the things that are actually going to move the needle versus trying to take it all on at once.
Yeah, it makes total sense because I'm doing that myself. This is just one part of my entrepreneur journey, and there's a larger vision to it. But let me just focus on this right now. Give it some traction, do it well, learn from it, and then I'm in those conversations. I'm building it on the side. We don't have to do everything now.
We oftentimes put those deadlines on ourselves, right? Oh, I need to have this done by Friday. And one of the things my business coach also shared with me years ago that I've passed on, and I'll share this with you, is this idea of shine a light on it. What's the worst that's going to happen if it's not done by Friday? Because most of us are putting these internal deadlines on ourselves, and we're causing all of this other stress and overwhelm and all of these negative things because we've put this deadline and it's arbitrary and it actually doesn't matter. And deadlines are important. Do not get me wrong. I'm a planner and I love schedules, but sometimes we put these deadlines out there that create more stress, and it's absolutely not necessary.
Absolutely. It needs to be realistic. We need to look at it holistically and not just one aspect of it, that this is why I need it done, but at what cost?
Yes. At what cost, right? Like all the money in the world versus your sanity and your mental health and your well-being, right?
And your family also suffers along with it. So it's not just you. You're talking about a number of people, your team,
Yes.
everybody. I know you talked a lot about culture. So I know you've spoken about the values very clearly. What are some cultural elements that are key for your organization?
Yeah, I think the interesting part was pre-pandemic, we had this beautiful office space, right? And it literally was on Milestone Drive. It was like just serendipitous. And I was like, we have to have this spot. This is amazing. And I'm moving in there, you open up the doors and you're like, man, we've made it. Because we've got this like pretty office and a reception desk, right? All the things. And fast forward, this thing called the pandemic happened. And I'm like, why do we have this big commercial office space with only a few people coming in? And so what I realized is I had this idea in my mind of what success looked like and what people needed to be successful, which is like, we're social creatures. We need to be together every day to brainstorm and blah, blah, blah. And what I found when things started to open back up again is very few people wanted to return to the office. And I have a lot of working moms that work for me at WildRock, and we all have families, we all have obligations, and things fall right smack dab in the middle of the day. Like today, my girls and I needed to leave to go do a dentist appointment. And so we were able to do that. And I didn't have to feel any guilt for leaving the office and coming back to the office and transporting kids, because I can work from home. We moved to a co-working space. And what we found is there is better employee retention and better overall employee happiness because everybody can be where they want to be. And we also found through these surveys and numerous conversations, as I mentioned, that we've been having, is sometimes those forced cultural events that companies do where they're like, we're all going to meet up and we're going to go bowling. Well, we did a Christmas party and we went bowling one year, and I found out that like over half of my staff actually hates bowling. And so I was like, oh no, like I made you all do something that you absolutely hate that was so stressful. And I was like, but what about all the drinks? What about all the food? Wasn't that part fun? And they're like, oh yeah, that part was great. But the bowling, we could have done without that. So this last year, we're like, well, instead of doing that, we're going to rent a limo and everybody's going to come in and we're going to pop some champagne and go look at Christmas lights. And so we were able to adapt this idea of what a typical work culture looks like into what does a WildRock culture look like. And so it's just been something I've been talking about so much with other business owners and friends and trailblazers is like, okay, ladies, how are we debunking this myth of what it actually looks like to have a solid and strong culture? And how do we actually give people what they want? When we sold the Milestone office, my message to my team was, do you guys want to keep this big, beautiful office, or would everybody like a raise every year? Guess what? It was unanimous. Everyone's like, sign me up for the raise. Are you kidding me? So now we have a yearly raise program, right? If you're with the company and you're loyal and you're performing great, which obviously everybody on our team does, guess what? You get a raise. Some companies don't do that. They don't do raises every year. It's like the Jelly Club, right? Like Christmas vacation, and everybody's, oh, awesome. I got something that actually wasn't meaningful. So understanding what's meaningful for your team, it's different than what's meaningful for WildRock, but just so critical to understand what are those cultural pieces. So we still get together, we still do things, we still have those human interactions, because I believe that is super, super important to establish trust and rapport. But we are all hybrid. And so we can come into our co-working space, we can meet each other at a coffee shop, we can all work from home because maybe we need a more flexible schedule for our kids, or you have a son, right? Kids get sick every every like week, and you're like, great, I got to get them from daycare, or I need to run to the school to pick so and so up. So it just provides a lot more of that flexibility and freedom.
Absolutely. And making employees do something that they don't like is not really building a healthy culture.
Yeah, so
Maybe they'll
ask if
take
your
it.
team wants to bowl before you schedule a bowling party.
But that highlights the free flowing conversations that you have with your people, your team, get their feedback, get to understand what they like, what they don't like, and to accommodate. I know that the more people you have, there might be difficulty in choosing what to do because everybody will have a different preference.
Yes, that is true. Yep. So
Yeah.
we do some voting and it's majority rules, and then we can save things for the future.
Yeah, but there's so much more flexibility and people will enjoy themselves. And I do get the importance that we need to have one-on-one interactions. I
Yes.
think you and I connected more with that just one meeting. We knew each other, we were connected virtually, but I think that in person made a difference.
It did.
And so I think it's an important aspect of a relationship building, but we don't need to do it every time or every day for that. One meeting, one interaction can be so powerful and it can have lasting effects. How we show up every time also matters. That trust builds over time.
Yes.
How you're showing up with your team, you've interacted with them for so many years and you've kept your word. So it makes a difference when they're responding and they're being honest in their feedback, and that psychological safety. They're not scared to say something,
Yep.
that there's going to be a backlash.
Yeah, so many people are scared of that in their jobs and their careers because they can't share things openly. And it's such a disservice to the organization, too. You have such a higher performing team if they feel like they have that trust and that they can come to you with anything or that they can push back on ideas. I love it. I encourage my team to do that all the time because sometimes I'll have what I think is the best idea of all times. And then I'll go and people are like, okay, let me poke some holes here. And then we ask some questions. I'm like, I'm so glad you asked that. I never would have thought of it like that.
Yeah.
So it just creates a better work environment and more productivity, more revenue, more profitability, right? A more successful company when everybody's happy.
Yeah. And that high performance comes from psychological safety, from enjoying the work culture, enjoying the people that you work with. It
Yeah.
all adds on to it. You're motivated to give your best. So it makes a huge difference. Now, when you are choosing your clients, how do you go about that process?
So our line that we actually use with prospective clients is, we're dating you just as much as you're dating us because we want to know about the skeletons in their closets, and we want to know where their brand is at and where their organization is going and what their goals are, and understanding all of that. So the upfront work that we're putting into understanding our clients, it's a lot, right? Because we're in this discovery process for quite some time to really understand what it is that they're seeking. And years ago, I used to do all the biz dev activity on my own, where I would go and meet with people, and then I'd write the proposals and I would do all the things. And then I'd bring the work back, like the hunter gatherer thing. And I'd bring the work back to the team, and everyone's, why didn't you ask this? Or the proposal forgot that, or whatever. Now it is this discovery process. And I do pull in people from my team, and actually have all account managers, account coordinators, any support people on those particular projects review those proposals before they go out the door, so that I don't say anything silly that A, we can't do, or B, isn't possible, or C, nobody knows if it'll actually work, kind of thing. So there's a lot of those checks and balances that we now have internally, and not directly as a result of letting this particular account go, but just as something that we've learned over the years is we really do need to be very selective and strategic about the accounts that we bring on board. And I remember there was one account, and this was in my early days, so I did know how to say no, but there was one account that called, and they had a bed bug machine that would actually get rid of bed bugs. And by the end of the conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I need to go shower. Like, there's bugs all over me. What's happening? So I told the guy on the phone, and this was when we were in a very small office. We were all in one room together, and everybody pops up from their different cubicles, and they're like, thank you for saying no to that. We did not want to work on the bed bug company. And I'm like, you're welcome, guys. I did have some, at least, guardrails a little bit. But it is important, and specifically on the marketing side, to be working with brands that you're passionate about. And so sometimes we'll have businesses come our way and we're like, ugh, we can't see the story here. Like, what's the story? What's the meat of all this? How are we going to get you publicity? How are we going to run this in digital ads? What are we going to do for your social media? How are we going to build this into a bigger multi-channel campaign? What does the messaging look like? And if it's not there, it's easier to say no. But that upfront discovery process on anything that we're doing as business owners is always mission critical. And so Kelly on my team has a new name for this. She calls it feasibility study, right? So if I have a new idea, she's great. Let's do a feasibility study. And I'm like, perfect. We all know what that means, which is doing our research and making sure that my idea will actually fly before we jump in.
So that whole journey, this transition, your business, how do you look back at it all?
I don't know. I think I look back at it all with just this awe and amazement of, wow, like, it's been a minute since I've started this business. And yeah, I've learned some things. But I guess if I'm really to boil it down to one thing, I look back on it and I look at the people. I'm such a people person. And the only reason I'm at where I'm at today is because I have an incredible team. Hands down, we call ourselves rock stars because they are. I hire people that are way smarter than me, way more organized, right? They can poke holes, they can do feasibility studies, they can help me bring all of these ideas and dreams to life. And so I'm really proud of the team that I've created. And I've told them that too. I'm like, I don't care if we're selling ice cream cones in the next 10 years. It doesn't matter what we do. What I know is I want to work with these people because they are phenomenal and they're just really good humans. And that's the thing too, that you don't always love the people that you work with. And it's really hard to find that. And I would say perfect, to find the perfect mix of personalities and styles. You and I have talked a lot about DISC, and finding these people that balance each other out, because we can't all be wired the same. And so for me, I remember more of the team stuff than I do all of the great client work. We've got awards that we've won, all these other things. But I look at my team and I'm like, man, that's what I'm really, really proud of, is we are really debunking this myth of what a work environment and what a culture could look like and what we're doing, and making hard decisions like letting big clients go along the way to create an incredible team that can do incredible work for our accounts.
It's so important. We all have different skill sets, that we are wired differently. And that's what makes good teams, to have different people to balance out what is missing in me. But then somebody else is great at it. And that's what makes a great team, those complementary skills that each of us brings in. And
100%.
it is so important to recognize each person's strengths, what they can and how they can contribute. Is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, probably a lot. I think the one thing is just investing in the right areas from the start. I think we did very much try to shoestring some stuff, and that actually worked and got us by. And I don't regret any of that. My biggest learning that I'm taking on the Trailblazers side of things is investing in the right branding, investing in the website, and doing these things and doing them right, because otherwise the cleanup from all of that is just so intense and it takes so long. Those really important things is just making the right investments from the beginning, because you get what you pay for, and maybe not keeping clients around for so long, but we're much better at that now.
That's a good one. What's next for you?
As I mentioned earlier, the WildRock side, the agency world, it's growing and it's really exciting, and it's curating the right people to scale on the team. And so it's a combination of an internal team that is just a total powerhouse, an external bench of experts that can do things. Then we can pull them in based on what our clients need. And that part has been so cool to be able to continue to scale and grow in that way without necessarily having to grow employees, right? That was a great blessing that came out of the pandemic too, is to learn to work in some different ways. So that's on the WildRock side. And then on the Trailblazer side, continuing to grow that. That's something that has filled my cup so much, is giving back and helping other women in ways that, maybe selfishly I so wanted in my entrepreneurial journey, to feel the connection, to network with other high-powered women who just get it and who are there to help you on this journey. So continuing that through one-on-one coaching and through retreats has just been such an amazing way for WildRock to take our learnings into the real world and give those back to women. But also, just as me as a business owner too, I continue to learn so much through our groups and working with other incredible women who want to help lift other women up. There's so many of us out there that want to help and we want to do great things. And finding and curating these groups and pulling all of those women together just brings so much joy.
Wonderful. My last question. What advice would you have for someone who is in a toxic work environment? They may not be entrepreneurs, but they might be in the corporate side. What would you tell them?
100% don't wait. Don't wait. It's not worth your health, your mental health, the relationships that we've talked about, right? The impact that you have on so many other people. And I get it. We all have different circumstances, and sometimes those decisions maybe need to be a little bit more strategic and thoughtful. But the longer that you wait to make that decision, the harder it's going to be. And so putting the plan together, putting pen to paper, putting a goal down, right? My goal is to leave this job in the next 6 months, or my goal is to land a new client in the next 6 months, or whatever it might be for you that makes it real and tangible. And journaling is amazing if you don't already journal all the time, because I think you can then track towards that goal and really, once again, shine the light on where is that fear. And if you're in a toxic situation, waiting and sitting around and expecting things are going to change, or because maybe you have one good day at the office and 30 other bad days of the month, waiting that one day and thinking that things are going to get better, chances are it won't, right? So looking at the bigger picture and planning ahead, but more importantly, don't wait. It's too short.
Right, absolutely. But yes, I think it's important to have that strategic plan in place, that not just wait around idly, but put something in place, start putting a plan in action towards that. Like you did. It wasn't an overnight thing. It took you 6 months to finally take that call, but you had started planning in that direction.
And when you put it out there, it becomes real. And then you're like, oh, I have to do it now. I told myself I would. So the person you don't want to let down the most is yourself.
Yeah, it's all accountability, right? If you start sharing it with somebody or putting it out there, then you become accountable to it.
Yeah. And finding those accountability buddies is critical, right? People that are going to call you up and be like, did you let go of that account yet? You're like, oh, I'm still on that fence. Get off the fence. Let's go.
Yeah,
Make it happen, sister.
true. Well, Kristin, such a beautiful conversation, so many learnings. I think I'm still processing some of it, but great conversation. And again, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all this with us.
No, thank you. This was incredible. Thank you for opening up the conversation for a very warm, natural dialogue and an opportunity to share with others. I think that's something that again, we're just missing as a community and striving for is how do we do this thing called life together? And a lot of it involves work. So thank you just for opening that conversation and welcoming me today.
It was all my pleasure. Thank you.
If you found the content valuable, please like, share, and subscribe and spread the word. I feel the best compliment is being referred. That one action of yours can help us reach more people and fulfill the mission of Thriving Changes. Thank you for considering.